Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd come on and share some thoughts, particularly as I think for many of us, the restrictions of coronavirus are really starting to hit home, to bite. Particularly this week, as we've seen the schools close, the restaurants, the pubs, the bars, the theatres, the cinemas, basically everything close in an effort to protect us from the spread of this deadly virus. And I know that there are many people who are finding those restrictions to be difficult, as you're suddenly locked into a place of staying at home with children who are perhaps climbing the walls, restless, confused, not really knowing what's going on. Never mind those of us who are adults who just aren't used to being at home for this amount of time. So I thought I would share a couple of thoughts, particularly today being Saturday, which for some of you, you may know, is in the Jewish tradition, the Jewish faith, it's referred to as Sabbath, as in the day of rest. In Christianity, that day was transferred to Sunday, but it's still the same principle of taking time to rest, to spend time with our families, to spend time with God in prayer, in reflection, in just ceasing from the busyness that we all spend so much time being engaged with. And I thought on that basis I would share a couple of things with you that might possibly be helpful. One of them is another prayer, which is related to the Jewish Sabbath. And then the other one is sort of a conversation between society and God, as many of us will have all sorts of questions about the current circumstances. So I hope some of this might be just a little bit helpful to those of you who may be watching. So the first one is a sort of prayer conversation between two voices, the voice of society and the voice of God. And it goes like this. Society, what about my plans? God, my plans for you are always better than your own. Don't worry, I'm going to work this all out for your good in the end. Society, but we're not going to get anything done. God, that's the point. You know how you keep spinning your wheels, always moving, always working, always doing, but never feeling satisfied. I've given you permission to stop. I've cleared your calendars for you. Your worth isn't tied to busyness or to accomplishment. All you have to do right now is to take care of each other. Society, but what are we supposed to do when we can't leave our homes? God, rest. You're always so busy and overwhelmed, crying out to me that you're weary and exhausted. Can't you use a break from your fast-paced and overscheduled lives? Go ahead and rest. Pray. Love your families. Read a book. Spend time together. Be still and spend time with me. Society, you really mean we're supposed to stay home with our kids all day, every day? God, yes, and you're going to be just fine. This time together is a rare gift. The rush of daily life has come to a halt. So play games, bake cookies, work on projects that you've never had the time for. Teach them kindness and grace. Show them how to endure difficult circumstances and steer them towards me. Society, but we'd better start hoarding anything we can get our hands on just to make sure that we're protected. God, prevention, yes. Precaution, yes. Preparedness, yes. But after that, it's time to put the needs of others before your own. So when you see someone in need, help them. Offer up what you have, particularly if you see someone without. Do not worry about tomorrow. Have I not always taken care of you? Now, go take care of someone else. Society, but we don't know who to believe. We're scared. God, I've got this, and I'm with you, come what may. And I also saw a reflection that I thought was really interesting. It was another one that was shared on Facebook, and it was an interview done apparently many years ago with anthropologist Margaret Mead. And she was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student who was interviewing her expected that she was going to talk about fish hooks or clay pots or grinding stones, things like that. But no. Margaret Mead said that the first sign of civilization in a culture was a femur, or a thigh bone, that had been broken and then healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you're left to die. You cannot run from danger, you cannot get to the river for a drink, and you cannot hunt for food. You become meat for prowling animals. No animal survives a broken leg long enough to be able to heal. So a broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken the time to stay with the one who has fallen, to bind up their wounds. Someone has carried that person to safety and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts. And I thought that was a really profound consideration, particularly at the moment as we're seeing so many news reports of supermarket shelves being cleared, of panic buying, of everything from toilet paper to pasta just disappearing. And equally, I'm starting to see some very, very poignant images that people are taking in grocery stores, not just of the empty shelves, but of those who society would consider to be weak or vulnerable, attempting to get even just a basic amount of groceries for themselves and being unable to do so. There was one picture that I saw just yesterday that honestly nearly broke me to tears. It was a very elderly woman who was really bent over, no longer able to stand straight, and she only had a tiny little trolley that wouldn't have taken much more than a pint of milk and a loaf of bread. And she was standing in front of rows and rows of empty shelves, unable to find anything to fill even that smallest of baskets. And when I saw that image, I really thought back to those words of Margaret Mead that I'd seen, that the sign of civilization is when we care for one another. And yes, we are long past the place of not leaving somebody with a broken bone out to be ravaged by beasts. Of course we are. But there's still an awful lot in that when we go to the supermarkets at the moment, people are scared. And many people are unfortunately thinking only of themselves, rather than thinking of those who are weaker and more vulnerable. And sadly, prompts me to wonder if in certain respects we might be at risk of losing our civilization. And so that brings me back full circle to this concept I mentioned at the beginning of Sabbath, of what can this time be for us? What can it show to us? Certainly there's all the elements of feeling stir-crazy, of being stuck inside, for many people of being fearful of what's going to happen for those who are concerned about their loved ones whom they can't see because of this coronavirus. And I thought perhaps in the light of all of the fearful headlines that we're seeing on the news, that it might again be helpful to reframe some of this as a way of not necessarily looking at the perfectly legitimate worst aspects of this, but of potentially looking at some of the blessings that it might bring us if we can find ourselves able to look for those in the midst of our fear. So I'm now going to read a poem called Pandemic, which is written by Lynn Ungar, and it is comparing this idea of rest, of Sabbath, to our current circumstances at the moment. And this is it. It's called Pandemic. What have you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel. Cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing. Pray. Touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands, but reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisible where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, for so long as we all shall live. May you be blessed in this time of Sabbath, of rest, of quietness, of silence. And in the midst of the fear, in the midst of the worry, may you find peace, may you find comfort, and may you find rest.